Okay, die letzte. Und ich werde die versuchen jetzt auf Englisch zu machen, weil der Spieler, der von uns hier mit Schwarz spielt, Roman, ist ein Flüchtling aus der Ukraine oder ein Flüchtlingskind aus der Ukraine und der kann kein Deutsch. Okay, let's go. Last game of this round, Carlos Neves against Roman Kulkovets. Starts with the Queen's Gambit or some type of Indian opening, and directly in the second move I have something to talk about. You can't play d5 in this position because you're abandoning the center to white without any resistance. The best moves here are probably e6, which could prepare some type of d5 here, or maybe go for some kind of Nimzo or Bogo Indian, like fighting for the center with pawns or with pieces. Or you play g6. You're hinting at some type of Grünfeld defense or King's Indian defense, where black abandons the center actually, but he gets some type of other counterplay. For example, knight c3. I will not play the Grünfeld because I always play the Grünfeld. e4, d6, knight f3, castles. A lot of people have a love-hate relationship with the King's Indian because strategically it looks so unsound. But black has his chances with e5, f5 pushes, maybe sometimes c5. So the idea of these g6 structures is to abandon the center and then to fight for it afterwards, or to look for some counterplay on the wings. But you can't play d5 because white just gets the center. You can't take with the queen because there will be knight c3, and there is no bishop b4. Knight takes d5, knight f3. Yes, this is a good move because after e4, knight f6. Now if white plays knight c3, you can think about playing e5, and after d takes e, queen takes. The knight can't take because there's knight takes e4. And after king takes, there's potentially knight g4, attacking two pawns. And the one on f2 hangs with a fork on the king and the rook. So you have to protect f2 somehow, maybe even king e1 back, I don't know. And then knight takes e5, and you have won the pawn back. So it's very precise from white to play knight f3 in this position. Bishop f5. This prevents e4, but it doesn't really prevent e4. White could play knight bd2. For people who play the Queen's Gambit, they should pay attention now. Knight bd2 prepares e4. After knight b6, e4, bishop g4, bishop e2. Yeah, white has the center now and is much, much better. The only slight problem white has is this knight on d2, but this is a problem which is easily solved in the future. So after bishop f5, knight bd2 would give white a great opening edge. White played a3. This is a move I don't understand. Yeah, okay, you take the b4 square away from the black pieces, but you don't really do anything for your development or for the center. e6, e3, and I don't understand a5 either. Okay, you can hint at some a4 ideas in the future, but why not develop first? I think it's always except when you're prepared or when you're a very strong player who knows what he's doing, you shouldn't play things like these. You should just develop your pieces to useful central squares or to squares where they exert control on the center. And then you can look for some plans afterwards, after you finished your development. a5 doesn't really fit in the position. Bishop e2, c6, another pawn move. I don't know if you want to play c6 in this structure. You could maybe play c5 at some point in the future, not now, maybe later. But if you play c5, now with a5 you have weakened your b5 square. So I understand why you want to play c6, but why not just keep the flexibility of your position? Just develop your pieces here. Bishop e7, bishop e7 or knight d7 here. Just develop your pieces and see where the game is headed for. Knight f6. Okay, this prevents e4, but you have moved the same piece in the opening 3 times. Yes, you played knight f6, then you took an d5 with a knight, and then you played knight f6 back. So you have a huge problem with development right now. And after knight h4, okay, white moves a piece for the second time too, but he has a clear plan. He wants to take your bishop. Now you move this bishop again. I would just have played knight bd7 here. Knight takes, pawn takes, queen c2 and g6. And we have an interesting structure here where white has a bishop here. So nominally white should be better. But this one bishop on c1 is restricted right now by his own pawns. He can't really move anywhere. And you have a strong control over the light squares in the center. So the idea is to keep this blockade on the light squares. And if you manage to do this, then you will effectively imprison this bishop on c1. So white can never play. So white can never use this advantage of having the bishop pair. So I don't know, maybe bishop d6, bishop g7, I don't know, and then castles, and then put your rook to e8, where he belongs, and then you can add some pressure onto the e file and onto the e4 square. That would have been better than moving this bishop again, where it's just taken anyways. So why would you give white another tempo when his plan is to take the bishop anyways? Takes, knight f3. Knight e7, final development. Oh, sorry. Castles, bishop d6. Okay, this is the phase of the game where I can be finally happy because both sides are developing their pieces. Knight f6. White should have played e4 here, just to take the center and threaten e5. And I would have been curious how black reacts to this. Bishop d2, castles, b4. And white is playing on the wrong side of the board, actually. If he plays b4 now, then he's just giving black a target to attack. Even here, white should have just played e4 in this position and see how black reacts to this. He has the bishop pair, he has the center, he has all the advantages he needs. He just needs to see how black reacts and then act accordingly. b4, takes. Sorry. I would have played queen e7 here, because in the game after queen b6 there was rook a b1 played, a strong move actually. And now this queen is on the same file as the rook, so there are potential tactical pitfalls to avoid. After queen e7, if white reacts in the same way with rook a b1, now there is no queen on b6, so black can just be happy with his position here. You can prepare the same thing. You can prepare the doubling of the rooks, I don't know. You can prepare the improvement on the knight. On d7, which isn't really doing anything. It's up to you what you're doing here. But the queen is just better positioned on b6 because it's not in the same file of the rook. Rook a3. Still in the next few moves, black manages to get a decent initiative when white is playing like some kind of headless chick. Like he plays this move and threatens a mate in one. But this is of course easily avoided, easily prevented. Knight d7 to f6. And now white has some problems here. Black threatens to push this knight back with h6. With h6. The pawn on b4 might be hanging. Even then, when you take this pawn on b4, you might get yourself in trouble with the pin on the b file, and then the queen would have been better on e7. See, now you can see my point in full force. Queen d2, h6, e4. This is not a good line for white. Takes out g5, takes out d5, and now I'm really surprised by the move black played here. And this is a simple case of just comparing different candidate moves. Okay, it's clear that black should take on d5 because white has the positional threat of d takes e6. Also the pawn on g5 is hanging, so you better take this pawn on d5. This alone narrows down your candidate moves to 3 single moves. You can take with a knight, you can take with a e pawn, or you can take with a c pawn. And now we just compare. Yes? You can draw a distinction between knight takes and the 2 pawn moves, because if you play knight takes, yes, you attack the pawn on b4, but it can just move forward, and like it happened in the game, and it can be somewhat nasty for you. So you can draw another distinction between the e takes and c takes d5 moves, and the best move would have been c takes d5 due to various reasons. For once, you have now a very beautiful pawn chain. One big pawn island and this pawn on b7, so you have a better pawn structure than white, who has 3 pawn islands. I'm sorry. So you have this. Also, you have a new strong point for the knight on e4, and you have immediate pressure on both these pawns. So, and by taking with a c pawn on d5, you also took away the possibility of playing b5 and opening the b file for white. So you have improved your own pawn structure. You have left white with some serious weaknesses, and also you have taken away white's most important idea of counterplay, all with one move. So this has to be the best move in the position by far. If you take with the e pawn, yes, now your pawn structure is a bit better too, but the problem is that white can still play b5 here, and it is really that clear. And knight takes d5 is by far the weakest move of the 3, because you're neither preventing white's counterplay nor are you improving your own pawn structure. After b5, c takes b5, rook takes b5, queen a7, bishop f3, and now you see a problem. If the pawn was on d5, then it wouldn't really be a big problem for you to react to this. But now white has an attack on the knight on d5. Queen a6, queen b2. An interesting possibility I found here was to play rook takes f3, g takes f3, and knight to f4. And you have sacrificed an exchange here, but you have completely destroyed white's pawn structure. So I can't imagine a single instance of this game where you would lose as black. And you have some interesting idea of just mating the white king. Yeah? If you manage to get your queen somewhere around here, then white would just be checkmated. It's a long way, but still it would be a nice plan. Let's say if I had this position and I had to choose between white and black, I would always take black. Knight f4, bishop b7, queen a7, queen d2. Yes, because there was a threat of knight d3. But the big problem is that white actually blunders big time in this position. Yeah. You see that the rook is actually pinned to the defense of the queen, so the rook can't leave the second rank. Which means that you have to think about this bishop on b7. This bishop is protected by the rook, but as I've just said, the rook can't leave b2, or it can't leave the second rank. So we have to think about, okay, what happens after queen takes b7? Now, black has just won a piece, so the only move for white to consider is taking on a2, because if you take on b7, you take on d2. You're just up a piece. So what happens if white takes on a2? Yeah, this is the thing you have to see, and I think you are able to see this because you're a very strong player, for your age especially. You can just play a surprising queen takes g2 checkmate. And this is where your strategy would have paid dividends, where you would have won the game just with one move, with queen takes b7. You have to look out for these tactics, because white has several problems regarding his tactical weaknesses. Yeah, white has to watch out for some kind of these forks, knight d2 or knight d3. White has a weakness on g2, and as said, the rook on b2 is very immobile. He can't really move. And if you add these pieces together, then you should see that queen takes b7 is winning. Sadly, it didn't happen in the game. In the game, rook takes b2 happened, queen takes b2, and knight d3. And yes, this would have been winning, but white has a strong intermediate move, rook a1. And after queen, rook b8, yeah, this is just a draw. And I will not further show the game because both sides exchanged all the pawns and made the draw. So what's important here? You can't play d5 without you have to have a good reason. Yeah, the Grünfeld exists, but the Grünfeld only exists because you can just take on c3 and follow it up with c5, and this pawn structure comes under attack. This is the only reason the green field is a valid opening. If you just play d5, then you can't take on c3. This is a problem. White just refuses to put the knight on c3. Then you have ignored your development for a long time. You have moved the same pieces several times in the opening, which should have given you a bad position, and you managed to come back from this. But then the most critical position of the whole game was this one, where just a comparison of 3 candidate moves would have been sufficient to gain an advantage. C takes d5, repairs your pawn structure and takes away all possibilities for white to have some counterplay on the queen side, and then you would have won. Probably not won, but have a good position. And here the queen takes b7 tactical shot. Always be aware for tactical shots, especially when white is so tied up with his defense. But it was a decent game, and especially for the first time someone has played in this league, a very respectful result for such a young player.